I went into work because I was just trying to be normal. And I remember my boss at work really she just said, if that had happened, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't have called in, and just like dismissed the whole thing. So that was the beginning of people not believing me, was that day. And I remember just sitting in her office thinking, well, maybe, because I couldn't believe what had happened anyway. And I just thought, well, maybe you're right. Maybe it isn't as bad as, maybe this isn't bad. Like, I don't really know. And super confusing. And then it just got worse after that. When I was sexually assaulted by my uncle, I can't remember all the exact details of him getting out of my house, but after I remember him leaving my house, the next thing I remember is my mum turning up at my flat. So I think I must have rung her, or she told me I rung her, although I don't remember that. So I rung her, and then she came round, and I then got taken back to my parents' house and shared with them what happened, but it was mostly in shock because I couldn't believe what had happened. So it wasn't really a conscious decision that I was going to go and tell somebody. I just couldn't believe what had happened to me by this person who I trusted so much, and I was frightened. I didn't know what to do. So I called for my parents. I was very young at the time. I was only 17. So I told my parents, and they did believe me straight away. The people that didn't believe me was the rest of my town, and I lived in a very small town. So I wasn't believed by the masses, but I was believed by my parents.
I actually sat in silence for about 2 to 3 years after I was first sexually assaulted. And I was basically not believed by several people that there was a reason that why I broke up with this person. People were very antagonistic towards me. I never told them the truth. And I just sat in silence for 2 to 3 years. And then I told my parents, and it was because I was going to have to encounter my abuser at my brother's high school graduation, as my little brother and his little brother were in the same year. And I didn't feel I was strong enough to do that yet. And basically they wanted to know every single detail. And they didn't understand why or how it happened. And they allowed me not to go to the graduation. However, I never felt as though they truly believed me.
For me, it was the work function, and I was assaulted by my former boss. It happened in the public eye, and no one saved me. And those people, there were my coworker that witnessed what happened, and they think that nothing else should concern them. So they didn't really believe me when I look at them that helped me, but everyone just kind of looked away. So the first person that I told was my best friend, who I sent my best friend a text and asked, this just happened and I don't know what that was. And the minute that she asked me if I'm the willing participant, and I said no, she said that is the assault. So I myself not even believe what happened. So it took me several days to finally share with my family, which my parents also, because they never experienced such thing before. So the first thing they asked me, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you scream for help? And that is when I realized that this thing, it has a lot deeper emotionally affected me than I could ever imagine.
As I said, I was believed by my parents, which I'm eternally grateful for. But then it was a weird situation because I was scheduled to work a 12-hour shift the next day. And so I called into work and said that I wouldn't be in till lunchtime. So I think I was still in some sort of shock and thought I just had to, after the police had been given my statement and they'd been to my flat and taken everything, I went into work because I was just trying to be normal. And I remember my boss at work really being, she just said, if that had happened, you know, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't have called in, and just like dismissed the whole thing. So that was the beginning of people not believing me, was that day. And I remember just sitting in her office thinking, well, maybe, you know, because I couldn't believe what had happened anyway. And I just thought, well, maybe you're right. Maybe it isn't as bad as, you know, maybe this isn't bad. Like, I don't really know. And super confusing. And then it just got worse after that, because obviously a court case then was being put together over the next 2 years. And I was a very young, troubled, runaway teenager. He was a very well-respected man of the town who everybody loved and thought a lot of. So everyone came to the conclusion, with his help, because he denied it profusely, that I was just out to ruin his life. And one by one, every person in the town didn't believe me, and it made life really difficult and made me at times believe that I was crazy and I had made it all up, which I know I didn't. So yeah, it's very hard.
Honestly, I was almost not surprised when my parents didn't believe me. I know that sounds crazy, but I have had a very tumultuous relationship with my parents over the years, in which I experienced a lot of anger in my household, a lot of neglect. For example, when I told them I was anorexic, they said, no, you're not. I was 88 pounds. Any sort of trouble I ever got into was completely ignored. So this was just another example of the bad seed doing another bad thing. And it's a lot of the reason why I was silent for 3 years. I literally was told not to date this person. And being who I was and having that relationship with my parents, I was very eager to be rebellious. And so I went forward with it, and I knew that my parents would literally say, I told you so, when this had all happened. And the words didn't come exactly out of their mouths that way, but it was pretty darn close. And I was assaulted multiple times after that. And every single time I told them, and when I even went through a court case with one of them, they wanted to know every single detail in order to believe me. And I've just come to learn that they aren't the people to go to get the support that I need.
For me, I feel embarrassed, humiliated, and I was silenced. I did not say anything to anyone else at work for the next 5 days, because knowing that a lot of coworkers that were there with me didn't even do anything to help me. So I don't even know how to start, being this person was my former boss. So I'm afraid that he going to do something to, you know, get me out of my job. So, I did call my parents again, and this time I told them that there is no reason for them to not believe me, because this never happened to me before. And it really changed me. I was scared. I couldn't even hear any of this person's name. And so finally, there was somebody else at work reported him, but also that person also, I feel like they're not really looking for my benefit for me, because they also think that because I'm go along with him. So I was called by HR to, question. And the way the HR questioned me was not very nice. It was like, hey, did you do anything? Did you engage in such things? And right away I broke down and I just say, I kept silence for the last 5 days, and this is my time to speak. And I was ready to take my life at that time. Glad I didn't, but it's not a good feeling. I was scared. It was awful. You just want to disappear.
True, because the reason that everybody was telling me that this wasn't true was because I was such an unstable, troubled child, and there was truth in that. I was an unstable, troubled child, and I had had a really turbulent upbringing at home. So I did believe that if I had been a better person, a more stable person with less problems, then I would have been believed, maybe. So yeah, I did believe it was my fault that I wasn't believed, because of because I was, off the rails as a teenager. So I did always think if I was a bit more sensible, then maybe people would believe that this had happened to me.
True. I did believe it was my fault that I wasn't believed. I also have to put into play the fact that I went to my parents. And I almost, as they probably would have told me, I should have known better. I should have known better than to have gone to my parents to try to be believed. I also feel that I knew in my heart that it wasn't my fault, but I went to the wrong sources in order to get the comfort and support that I needed.
True. I totally blame myself for not being believed, but that also has to do with my personality. I am very timid, quiet person when I'm at work, because my role, I have to be extrovert per se, but typically I like to keep a lot of things to myself, and I hardly ever say anything. So of course, when I say something, and if I choose to say something, people are going to be like, oh, then instead of they say, oh, I believe you, they say, oh, she spoke up. But it's the afterthought that they even go to the next step, where they're going to say, oh, yes, I believe what you say. That is why I kind of limiting myself from even say anything to work, which I regret that I should have been the first person to make a phone call to HR before somebody else reported and paint the picture completely different than what actually happened.
At the time, I think I had very little awareness of what the experience would be for somebody after something like sexual assault. And really, I think maybe where I was really young as well, you're quite absorbed in just your own space. And I think I was so wrapped up in everything else that was going on in my life that I couldn't see past the fact that, yes, this had happened to me, but at the same time, it was my fault that I was getting all of this backlash because of how my life was going. So therefore, if I had done a better job at doing my life a bit better, then maybe I would be given belief. I don't know. I don't think I thought further than that at the time. So I just really just stopped at that point, just thought, well, that's just how it goes for me, because I'm living such a chaotic life, so I don't get believed. And I just think my thought process pretty much stopped at that. I didn't think it was fair, but I think that's just where my thought process stopped at that time.
So when this happened, I was 15. My 16th birthday was right around the corner. I felt very alone. And I had no idea that this happened to other people. I had no idea how systemic the issue was. I had no idea that this happened to so many women. So I had no idea that it was common that we weren't believed. I just assumed that it was something that I had done to make people believe that it was my fault or that I had done something to cause it. Now in subsequent assaults, I did speak up and I spoke my truth immediately, and was believed by other sources, because I did get the resources that I needed. Professional resources. A friend actually called the cops anonymously to ask what the rape trial process was so that I would be informed. So back the first time that it happened, I was completely alone. But the second and third times, I was very much standing in my truth and knew who to go to and how to go about spreading my truth.
And nope, I have no clue. I thought the sexual assault only happened in the movie or in the TV drama. And when it happened, and I'm like, no way, this, I don't know what to explain. I don't know how to define what just happened to me. And I quickly blame it's my fault. I must have done something. Maybe it's me. Did it really happen? So I have lots of questions that run through my head, because I still think, no way, this is a movie. This is not happening in real life, and no one should ever experience that. And what did I just experience? So I think I was almost like, dreaming. Was it a dream? Lots of questions, has been thousands of questions run through my head for days, until finally I feel comfortable to say something, talk to my doctor, because that's the first person I reach out before I reach out to the police. And when I reached out to the police, that was difficult as well, because the police first want to talk to me, say, oh, I can't file the report for you. You have to meet me at the incident site. And I almost faint because I can't. I thought about not even deal with any trial or anything because of that. And I give it a try again, another 24 hours to call the police again. This time I talked to a different person, and the experience has been different. But yes, learned so much through all these things. But yeah, it was definitely something I wish no one else ever have to go through this.
I did know him. He was my uncle. The public persona of him was spotless, and he came back into my life. So he was my natural father's brother, who I didn't have a lot of contact with because I then had a stepfather for years. I left home at 15, and he started to show an interest in being a part of my life again and wanted to be this supportive adult. I put him on a parental pedestal. He helped me a lot because I left home at 15, so he helped me with like setting up my new place and became friends with me and all of my friends, and was really well liked, really well loved by everyone. I thought he was the cool uncle who was everything an adult should be to a young person, and this is what a relationship should be modeled on: respect, fun, friendship. I thought he really had my best interest at heart, and of course, to the outside eye, he was my uncle who'd done all these things to help me, and then I come and say this about him. And I'm the troubled girl saying this about this well-respected man, and everyone's shocked that I could do something to ruin his life like this, and how dare I do this. And so yeah, he was loved and I was villainized, and ultimately it led to me being, you know, pretty much run out of town because of physical and verbal attacks on me from others between when the event took place and the court case taking place. So yeah, public persona for him was great, and mine was trashed. I mean, it wasn't great anyway, mine, because I was a bit of a troubled kid, but it was mud by the time I left that town.
I did know my abuser. He was my high school sweetheart. Basically, there were signs that he might do something like this. He had bullied my little brother previously. He was very verbally abrasive and very controlling. But nobody really saw that except for those that were directly in line by his verbal attacks. And honestly, the school never recognized it. Even though my brother was bullied, there was no repercussions for him, for my abuser who bullied my little brother. There were several other signs and things like that I just ignored. However, like, he was the star of the school musical. He, you know, had a bunch of friends. He was extremely smart. He was recruited by the University of Toronto at the age of 16 to go and study engineering. So as far as his family was concerned, and as far as the school was concerned, he was an upstanding citizen.
I watched this man from when he was just regular employee, and watch him progressing in his career until he become my boss. So I trust him, trust the friendship, trust him professionally and personally, even though I set my boundary pretty solid. So I never really spend time. I would never go. I have never behind a closed door with just him, even at work. Always open door, you know, 'cause I'm claustrophobic, so that kind of been helping. But yes, he is a well-spoken person. He like to give advice to people. I feel comfortable with him to, you know, if see, like, if we have to go camping or something and there's only one camp, you know, I know that this person will not harm me. It's that much trust that I have with this person. So, and for when it happened, and when the police interviewed him and I was on the phone as well, first thing that he said, well, you didn't say no to me. You're my friend, and I thought that I could just do whatever I want with my friend. I never cussed in my life. Every time I cuss in college, people collect money. So I let a few words out because I was very angry and disappointed.
The people that didn't believe me, the boss at my work seemed to just, she wasn't aggressively against me like the rest of the people, but she was just very dismissive, like I was just a silly little girl, you know, saying something stupid. But the rest of the people were very much groomed by him, because he really almost campaigned around town for himself, for his cause, so to speak. So yeah, he did. He even got his girlfriend at the time to lie about the time that he got home. She was fast asleep. She didn't know what time he got home. So he really did have everybody charmed, would be the right word. Absolutely charmed and in awe of him, because everybody just thought he was amazing, and sold the story to them of, you know, everything I've done for Emma, all these things I've done for her, and now she's trying to do this to me. I don't understand it. And really just playing the victim, you know. So that's what I witnessed and heard and saw, and had people come at me aggressively for 2 years afterwards, leading up to that court case. I heard it daily.
What's ironic is that the people that didn't believe me also were the people that told me not to date him. So it was just one of those cases where I believe that the history, my track record, really played against me. Being anorexic, self-harm. I got straight A's in school and I never talked back. I never did anything to them, but because I was sort of a troublemaker in their eyes, they just decided to place the blame on me. And I don't think that my abuser groomed them per se, especially because he acted just as he would in front of me, in front of my parents. It was almost like he knew he could get away with anything. And so in the end, I can only really sit and think that it had to do with my relationship with my parents and not with the way that he was interacting with them.
I'm not sure if groom is the word that I'm going to use, but because the person who abused me is the biggest boss of everyone, and how it happened is that I was assaulted at the picnic table in public eye, public view at night. And I think those 4 or 5 people that witnessed it, they also work for this boss. So they choose to not say anything or choose to just look away. Well, that's not my problem. So just kind of left me to defend for myself. And I also, at the time, I feel like because he is my boss, I don't want to berate him in front of people that he leads. So that's kind of, I'm still thinking, oh my God, this is friendship, this is boss. I'm froze. I don't know what to say. So I told him, I'm like, can we please, I need to talk to you. Can we please get up and go and talk? So I'm here in my thinking is that I don't want to berate him in front of his people that he lead. As I got up and walk away, that's where people who didn't believe me, they say, oh, because she followed him. That is why we shouldn't believe her. When in fact, when I got up and go around, that's where I yell at him as I'm out of these people's sight, but that's why he raped me again. So I was assaulted multiple times. And I thought I got up, walk away would save me and save him from, getting humiliated in front of people that he lead. But why did I think about him at that time? Things run through our head. We're not thinking straight, so.
Not being believed for me carried on to the court case because my character was dragged through the court, and so it went against me because they brought up all of the trouble I was in as a person and was I even a credible witness type of thing. So what that meant for me was that when I was violently raped by a stranger a couple of years later, I didn't bother saying anything to anybody because what it taught me was there's no point. Because even when you've got evidence, which I had, they took all my bed sheets, they found forensic evidence of fibers on my sheets, but because he hadn't ejaculated anywhere or inside me, that made it harder to prove. And so when this violent rape happened with a stranger a few years later, I think the biggest impact it had for me was that I just said nothing to anybody for years because I'd learned there's no point. So I think that's probably the biggest impact it had on me and my life afterwards.
I actually, after telling my parents and waiting several years, I did tell other people what had happened to me, and I was believed by them. I think that because I did my research, I did a lot of volunteering for organizations with survivors. I knew that what had happened wasn't right. And so when I was assaulted the second time, I documented everything. So every single text he had sent me, every single time he had violated my trust, you know, and I never submitted it because he was so remorseful in the end. And I felt that I had kind of like done my duty and that this was a one-time thing. I was very sure in myself that it would be okay to talk again. And the third time that I was assaulted, I did say, I'm going for a rape kit. You know, I went 24 hours, less than 24 hours later. I did the forensic interviews. I went through the depositions. And in the end, even though my case wasn't taken on, because I was told by a female DA that I wasn't beaten up enough in order to go forward with the trial, I was still very confident that I had scared the bejesus out of him. And I was told, I listened to his deposition and was told that he was absolutely terrified at what was going on. So I took what I had learned and applied it, and I feel much more confident in setting boundaries, in knowing what I need to do, in knowing how to potentially prosecute, even though I didn't get to the trial, and how to also just stand in my truth and speak up from now on, because you never know what other woman has gone through.
I certainly developed self-doubt to everything and anything. At my work, I have to make decisions to, involve in a lot of arbitration with my employee that got terminated. And recently, I have one case of the employee that involves something similar to my incident. So that difficult for me. So, but company work with me as far as, make sure that they care for all those sensitivity. I too decided to telling people, but I keep journal. I bought myself a journal that say it's gonna be okay, but I have name of people that I talk to. So in my mind, if anyone that talk about me or my story, they don't know the truth because I did not talk to them. So that's kind of how I set myself, and I'm trying to build that resiliency. Fortunately, I have my like senior leader of my company who truly care. They did call and check on me twice a day. When it happened, they quickly took care of him. So he was terminated within a week. I have vacation lined up, and this is not something that it's already it decided at that time. It was planned. So I was happy that I get to go away on the other side of the world. I spent 3 weeks away from this place, from the things that would remind me of him or what happened. So I think that I'm the same way. So kind of learn from not speak up to I'm like, okay, I have voice and my voice need to be heard, and I need to keep doing that to build, bring that person who confident in making decision back, because that person need to come back.
The truth is, at the time, I ran away. So I'd already run away from home when I was 15, but I was in the same town, but I was living under a different roof, and I ran away from that town. I moved to a bigger town where I felt like I could start again, where I felt like not everybody knew everything about me. And after all of that, life went off the rails for a good number of years. But I suppose really coming back from that has been in later years, when I actually started to work on myself, because I realized I needed to, because I went for many years going, that didn't affect me. Oh yeah, that happened, but no big deal. That's how I dealt with it for years. And it's really only in the last 10 years that I've done my proper work on myself, and that's where I've realized that I don't need anybody else to be okay after this, and I don't need anyone to believe me to be okay after any of this, because I have myself and I know what my truth is. And really, I've only stepped into that recently, and then stepped into that strength recently, and I've only stepped into the healing particularly in the last few years, where I've let it go through a lot of trauma therapy. So for me, it's very recent. I ran away from it for years.
Initially, because of not being believed, I was very silent. But then I began to look to other survivor groups and really tell my story there, where I was going to be supported, and realized and understood much more information about how I'm not alone. And it really impacted the way that I perceived what had happened to me. And it really impacted the way that how I moved forward in other assaults. I think without that help in the survivor groups, I would have stayed silent for much longer. Even though I was silent for quite some time, I would have stayed silent for much longer if I hadn't gotten that support. And also through professional therapy, I've been able to realize I even had EMDR, which is a process in which you, it's a bilobal process in which you forget the memory and it becomes neutral through flashing lights, through going through the details, etc. And so through EMDR, through professional help, I was able to neutralize the memory, to talk more freely, and to really stand in my truth.
I was teaching fitness class at the hospital as a volunteer, and after that happened, I stopped for a few weeks, and then I realized I want my voice to be heard. I want to be able to speak up. I need to find that voice again. So I went back first day on that stage, and I have to speak on the mic, tell people what to do, and they start moving. You know, like I'm teaching Tai Chi and yoga, so it felt great that, oh, somebody listened to me, somebody looked at me like they believe me. So I know that's not the same, but to me, that is something that kind of first step to help me feel like somebody listened to my story, even though they don't even know what story I have in my head. But for them to follow me when I tell them to do this move and that move, so that helped me there. Also, professional therapy helped a lot. I also went through the EMDR. I think that's the most effective, that helped me tell me that this is gonna be okay. I'm gonna overcome this, and I just have to keep on with it. I write journal, so journal helped a lot. My assault anniversary coming up in a few days, so every day since it happened, I wrote a big one word of my feelings. So I have 300 and something words so far. So yeah, that helped a lot, and it reflecting back to how far I've come. So it truly helped me overcome this.
Yeah, I'd like to follow on from what Carly and Boom have both said about support groups and specialised trauma therapy. I think when something traumatizing, emotionally overwhelming, too big for our nervous system to handle happens to us, that's one thing to deal with. But then when we are not believed as well, it compounds that, and it confuses all of the emotions that we have around that. And I think that actually makes the trauma worse, and we store it in our body in a really crazy way, because we can't even be validated in how we feel, because we're told how we're feeling is wrong because it didn't happen. So it's crazy making. So for me, as with these other ladies, EMDR was huge for me. I did it at the end of last year, and it really was life-changing, and I really didn't have any idea how much I was holding on to inside, and the narrative that I had in my head around the emotions that I was holding on to. I felt guilty and responsible for the emotions that I was having as a result of the trauma I'd experienced, because I was being told how I felt wasn't real, because I'd made, you know. So it's EMDR really helped me unpack all of that. So I would highly recommend specialized trauma therapy.
So I would recommend absolutely seeking professional help, whether it be through EMDR, through specialized trauma therapy, through survivor groups, through individualized therapy with a psychiatrist, with anybody in the mental health profession world. I think it's extremely important. And I believe that with that professional help, it's just so much easier to move forward. To know that you're not alone is step one. To be able to speak up and to stand in your truth is so important too, because you might be helping another life by speaking up and standing in your truth. And I'm realizing that more and more and more and more. I'm becoming more and more healed the more I speak. And then the more I speak, the more I realize that I'm not alone. And the more I realize I'm not alone, the more I realize that other women have gone through the exact same thing that I have. Of course, it's never really the exact same thing, but through similar processes. I advise to really take care of yourself. Lean into that self-care, realize when you're becoming overwhelmed and flooded. And as you call it in that lizard brain, that fight, flight, or freeze, because it's really easy to get re-triggered. It's really easy for the first years to have those flashbacks and to really know when to dial it down from a 10 to a 1. It takes a lot of professional work to realize how to do that as well. I think that it's also really important to take time to breathe and take time to reflect.
First of all, you're going to hear this a lot, that it is not your fault. So I believe that you have to tell yourself that it is not my fault. And then, from that point on, then I would advise to seek the professional help. It is okay. No one going to judge you. That's a big thing. I was so afraid of someone going to judge me. I'm like, well, you in such a professional level career and you have this happen to you. So don't judge yourself. Believe what happened. It did happen. Otherwise, you wouldn't be feeling this way. You wouldn't be thinking about it. I feel the same way. As the more I speak up with the group of people that I feel like I can help them, it helped me heal tremendously. I feel like if I cannot put this person behind a bar, at least I want to be able to help others from experience the same thing that I did. One other thing is that I feel like a lot of corporate America have they have so many policy and rules that talk about the employee can go and report when something like this happened, when something that based on protected category, or when the sexual assault happened. But what if some employee who, like me, who are afraid to speak up? What is it policy that can help these people? So I am now, and I have been the advocate that I'm working with people in my headquarters. So I'm voicing that concern anonymously, but it's true. It happened to me, but how many people really come forward and say something? So any little thing that I can do, be that voice, and just make sure that you take care of yourself. Self-care is the most important thing.
Hi, I'm Carly, and I am a survivor.
Hi, I'm Emma, and I'm a survivor.
Hi, I'm Boom, and I'm a survivor.